Um, so again, I know it's a lot of information, um, but again, I want everybody to look over that on their own, read it, feel it, see if you resonate with it, um, and take your time. Be kind with yourself. I know a lot of times in the past, people would always say, "Oh, be kind to yourself," and I didn't know what that meant. And again, I host another event on this too. I'm about to get into Laura knows. I'm about to get into a whole other topic, but being kind to yourself, as briefly as I can kind of mention it, is recognizing what makes you feel uncomfortable and what makes you feel safe. And that continuously changes. So having the awareness even to that and saying, like, okay, I'm going to feel myself out. I'm going to pay attention to how I feel around people, places, X, Y, and Z, right? How my emotional state is. I might not always agree with how I feel because I've, again, found myself in those moments where out of nowhere I'll feel my heart start pounding and I'll say, why am I feeling this way? Nothing's happening right now. I'll be driving or and I'll say, okay, well, let me think about this. Instead of in the past where I would start to feel this and go, what's wrong with me? Oh gosh, what is it now? Right now, I'll say, okay, this is a perfect time for me to gauge myself. What's going on? So I'll share an example, something that I was so proud of myself too when I figured this out. But it was when I was living in Texas. I moved from New Jersey to Texas to leave my abusive husband. And I didn't know anybody in Texas. I didn't really have resources. And I was driving to the county domestic violence place to just talk to someone and see what type of resources they had in the county for me. And as I was driving is when this heart palpitation started happening. And I was like, this is weird, right? But I'm already a self-aware person at this time, right? So now I'm like, this is interesting. Why am I feeling a sense of panic? Is it because I'm nervous about going? I'm like, I'm not nervous about going. I want to go. I seek this place out. I called. So here I am reassuring myself, Michelle, no, you made these choices. This is something you want to do, right? So as I'm doing that to myself in my mind, now I'm thinking, why do I feel nervous? Why do I feel scared? Why do I feel threatened? And in that moment, my memory brought me back to when I was a child. My mom used to make me feel bad about asking for help. And the reason why she did that is because she was very prideful. And growing up, we grew up in such poverty. I mean, she could have gotten food stamps, she could have gotten Section 8, she could have gotten so many things, and she never applied for anything. And she would just not have food in the house, anything. And most times when I would go out and ask for help, it was because I was hungry. It was because I needed food. And she would find out because in our town, there were like pizzerias, and my mom worked in the food industry. So she knew a lot of the stores and the delis and the stuff in town. So I would go in and I'd be like, hi. And they're like, oh, you're, so and so's daughter. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you want a slice of pizza? And I'm like, yeah. Or sometimes I would go in and say, hey, can I have a slice of pizza? I'm sorry, I don't have money. And thankfully I did that as a kid and I didn't feel bad enough. But my mom, when she would find out, would get mad at me and would scream at me and be like, don't ask people for help. What do you not understand? We don't want people knowing our business. And it was because she got offended. It made her feel like she was a bad mom. So instead of fixing the actual problem and giving us food and giving us the stuff that we needed, so we didn't have to go out in town and ask random people for help or food. So that's why I felt so bad. So here I am as an adult driving to this place because I know I need assistance with food. I know I need assistance with housing or rent, all this stuff because now I'm a single mom and all this other stuff. And it was in that recognition that I was like, wow, now where the heck else does that fly? Right. So it's like the minute we get the opportunity to reflect and see how these and again, it could be from childhood, it could be from many different ways, but it starts with the awareness of ourselves and how our bodies feel. So being kind to yourself is recognizing when you get triggered, when you get heart palpitations, right? And then stopping and saying, okay, am I safe? I don't know if anybody's familiar, but when you're in therapy and you have anxiety, the therapists will like to tell you a lot. I know I've heard this in many therapy sessions was like, ground yourself. All right. And if it means looking in the room and saying, okay, I want to find something green. I want to find something blue, right? By doing that subconsciously, you're concentrating on looking for something. So your mind is now not thinking about whatever it was that triggered you, right? But when you're outside, you could do the same thing. What can I feel? What can I smell? What can I hear? And just taking those moments. So if anybody hasn't heard of that, those are great tools as well. When you're having these anxiety attacks, if you start recognizing that you have a physical reaction over yourself, just try to ground yourself and say, okay, well, am I safe? I've had to do this with myself and I still do it. I'm not saying I get triggered very often, but I still do. I mean, I've lived a whole life of trauma. I mean, I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But I'm kind to myself when I recognize it. And when I feel those things, now I know I'm like, okay, I'm not in danger. What's going on? Why am I feeling this way? And after a while, the more and more you do that, now I embrace that, not that I look forward to it. That's a little crazy. But, when I do find myself in those moments, I'm excited to dive into myself and figure what it is because I don't have as much as an emotional attachment as I used to when I was younger or when I was less self aware. And one of the best compliments I hear from people is, wow, you're so self aware. And I'm like, hell yeah. Like, that's one hell of a compliment. Like when someone can say that and they don't really even know you all that well. And they're like, wow, you're one of the most self aware people I've ever met in my life. And I'm like, and if anybody's ever heard me talk about receipts, I know Laura might laugh. Yeah.